his trial strategies, including how he tactfully outmaneuvered the defense and his investigative vision that led inexorably to checkmating Tough Tony Boyle, the corrupt assassin and president of the United Mineworkers of America. Another character, if you will, that is featured in this book is the unique culture of Appalachian coal country, which affected the investigation and prosecution of these cases. Going back to the early 18th century and the mass migration of Scots-Irish immigrants to the Appalachian mountain range, we seek in this book to illustrate how 200 years later, some members of that pious, proud, hard-working people got caught up in a war between their consciences and their loyalty to a union and its leadership that had protected their way of life for generations. Often maligned and misunderstood by the press and the public, it was fortunate that Sprague and his team saw them as an historic people, not foolhardy stereotypes, and only then were they able to get at the truth. On one level, coal country killing speaks volumes about how a committed individual, Dick Sprague, can make a huge impact. A triumphant, uplifting victory delivered by a righteous, legendary figure. Yet this book is much more meaningful. To do justice in our lives, to be civil, tolerant, rational, and forthright, is to enhance the dignity not only of ourselves, but of the public office we may occupy, the job we hold, and the culture in which we thrive. Those values are timeless. We need to experience them so that we may always be reminded who we are and from where we came. When faced with cultural coarsening, we seek affirmation of triumph. Coal country killing satisfies that need. Throughout all the time Dick Sprague and I spent going over the case's complexities and values that motivated extraordinary characters to ultimately seek justice, Dick's only admonition was that I must always remain objective. My colleague, co-author Steve Jackson, and I have fiercely sought to disclose the unvarnished truth throughout coal country killing. I assure you, our souls remain intact and uncompromised. During the course of the entire case, investigation, and trials, Sprague demonstrated the imperatives of the prosecutor's mission: seek justice with immutable evidence and with painstaking preparation, exonerate the unjustly accused, and prosecute the guilty with firmness tempered with compassion, regardless of his influence and status. Prologue: The Visitors. December 18, 1969. The two young men facing Joseph Jock Yablonski late that afternoon fidgeted and kept glancing sideways at each other. Shuffling their feet, they hemmed and hawed as if waiting for the other to say or do something they'd planned. Standing in the doorway of his 200-year-old stone farmhouse, Yablonski, a short, heavy-set 59-year-old with a face as craggy as the surrounding Appalachian hills, scowled. Something wasn't right with these two men. One skinny and pasty-faced who did most of the talking, and the other, a moon-faced, thuggish-looking fellow with a 5 o'clock shadow and thick, dark eyebrows. A few minutes earlier, they'd pulled up in a maroon '65 Chevrolet Caprice in front of Yablonski's house. Yablonski and his family lived in a house in the country, near the tiny hamlet of Clarksville, just 50 miles south of Pittsburgh in southwestern Pennsylvania. They said they were out-of-work coal miners and were hoping to work at a nearby mine. They wanted his help to get a job. Suspicion knitted Yablonski's own bushy eyebrows that perched above his deep-set eyes and prodigious nose like two hairy caterpillars. Recent events had made him cautious, and their story sounded like bullshit. Neither looked like a miner, and even if they were,